Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Ruck along with Nick Jolis with Farmers Keeper. We're seeing some mixed trading grain and livestock right now with livestock mixed in the grain trade. Corn and soybeans down. Wheat is seeing just a little bit of an increase in price this morning, or a little bounce anyways. And talk about this fund liquidation that we've seen the last couple of days in the grains, Nick. I know some of it's been risk off, but is it just that, or is there more to it?
Well, they're also looking at just favorable weather patterns as well. And they're always trying to match their own seasonal trading patterns around what we typically see as price spikes in June time frame of just when the harvest contracts for corn and beans tend to be worth the most. So it looks like they're hedging their bets with what looks like is going to be overall across the country, not in every area, a pretty good production time of the year. And they're also looking at May and July spreads that now have hit another record for that contract, almost at 40 cents, to where we're seeing that mess with the cash basis side of things with how elevators are bidding on their futures contracts.
Yeah, we're almost trading two separate crops here, obviously. And those inverses that you talk about, what happens now? We have option expiration today on May contracts. We go into first notice day and delivery period next week. So what happens to those spreads, and how is that going to impact cash basis levels going forward?
Well, so we haven't really seen very many elevators out there right now bidding anything on the May, which obviously by next week, that's going to be taken care of itself.
Right. And they haven't been for a while, have they?
Correct. And I think that a lot of elevators are in between one of two different scenarios. Either they're trying to bid up and get grain out of storage, like we've been talking about, that's been under lock and key, or they really need to just spread out when they're getting the grain in areas where producers are trying to deliver to them as much as they can. So it's as much of a supply chain issue as well from the elevators perspective, just to keep their grain flows steady between those who want to hold out to the last second because they think grains are going to spike again like they have the last few years, or those who are saying, hey, it doesn't pay to store grain right now. I want to try to get this out as much as I can. And you may be battling terrible winter weather up in the northern plains. So they're dealing with those real world factors as well. And that's showing up in the spreads.
Right. And what have cash basis levels done here this week?
Well, they've been doing all the work here, as we've seen, just to get things going, because we keep knocking through new support levels, falling down here as we get favorable weather patterns. But I still maintain that those relatively strong historically cash basis levels, even though they're starting to ease a little bit, they're still not enough to make up for the work that's been done, or the damage, I should say, in the futures market. And that's where the concern gets there. So don't just watch those cash prices.
Right. We have taken out major support areas now. I don't think May corn has, but new crop corn and soybeans have both taken out some long-term support here now, haven't they?
Right. And I think a lot of this from the producer side of just their own marketing plans can be a little bit of complacency from two factors. Number one, sitting in a strong cash position from last year where you might have more leeway to wait for the price you want, which, by the way, may never come. But then on the other side of things, it's just a matter of storage and when you're going to get it out. So if we see that with a strong crop coming, now the bottom can fall out there all of a sudden. And that's where we're more concerned about things.
And let's add on top of that the situation on the river, because there is going to perhaps be some flooding in some areas, right? And what is that going to mean?
Correct. I was over in Muscatine, Iowa, on the border of Iowa and Illinois yesterday, talking to a couple riverboat captains, trying to move out as many barges as they possibly could, because it looks like in that area that they're going to shut down the river starting early next week for a couple weeks. So people that have those contracts that have finally been able to get out there and haul, of course, now planting's getting up and running, they're going to have issues potentially getting all that offloaded. That gets pretty scary, and that can have another negative effect in the short term for cash basis levels.
Absolutely. I got to ask, though, as well here, you talk about weather, and really the mentality now is rain makes grain. We're going to get the crop planted. But, basically right now we're still ignoring those guys up in the northern plains where we're expecting, to see those increased acres of corn and soybeans coming from this year. When does that all get worked out?
Well, so by the way, all that flooding on the river now, funny how quickly things change. That's coming from the snow melt that's melting up in the Dakotas and in Minnesota. In their case, I know that those producers themselves get very worried, and you're always going to overcount that when you're in the hot seat. And there's no doubt that there's a big problem there. We still do have some time. If we're having the same conversation again, that the ground hasn't warmed up or anything by mid-May, now we're really looking at those prevent plant issues and everything. However, I want to just be sober about it to say, well, conditions are looking pretty good, not perfect, not perfectly ideal, but they're looking pretty good in the highest yielding areas of the country that could take us over the top in terms of what we're going to produce nationally. Basically, if Iowa and Illinois have a bumper crop, which we could have coming up here.
Right. So wheat took a big hit yesterday, especially HRW wheat, because of some of these forecasted rains, but some areas did get missed. So is that why we're seeing a little short covering today?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's trading a weather market just as much as corn and beans are here. We were up a little bit on the overnight, and now we've opened up down on wheat. I think it's another case of, you got to examine what percent sold you are. I know that's harder to do with wheat further ahead of time, but really starting to get sober about what am I doing about these prices, because we need to see demand out there, and you can't just rely on the Black Sea grain deal causing shifts. One thing I want to note too is we've been used to the past few years where we're making these bigger moves in much bigger quantities in terms of price move in that bullish market, right? Limit up days or just days where we're consistently going, 10, 20, 30 cents higher. We've just been seeing a market now, which can be deceptive, of just slipping slowly and steadily every single day. And then that's when you wake up months later and you say, oh man, what happened to price?
Right.
We broke through some price resistance levels, but it's not like corn's been down 20 or 30 cents a few times in the past few days. It's just been consistently lower to mixed. That's deceptive.
And one quick last question for you, for our livestock guys out there. Are you suggesting to them maybe to buy a little more hand to mouth just because of what you just said about the bigger crop coming at them and maybe some lower prices?
Absolutely. We're seeing a lot of feeders out there too, trying to supplement their rations to try and avoid that. Of course, if we do continue to see grains come down, that's also going to have an effect on prices anyway. So you kind of have to weigh those two options there. But I would definitely be in that camp of taking only what you need for now and taking it one day at a time there.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Nick Cholis with Farmers Keeper. And that is Markets Now.
Thanks, Michelle.